Hi, this is Super Ducky Power, and today we are going to be working on the Halston Balestrom plushie. He's Professor Halston Balestrom from the game Wizard101. He's the Storm School professor in Ravenwood. And I would like to add a disclaimer to this video telling you that he's not suitable for use by children or pets. He's not a toy or like a plushie that I would suggest giving to small children or pets who wouldn't treat him with care. And then please use caution when you use scissors, hot glue, and sewing needles, which are all supplies which will be necessary for this project. So the first bit of supplies you're going to need are going to be a few different colors of felt. You're going to want tan or like a light brown, black, yellow or gold, leaning more towards yellow in my opinion, but you could get a more gold color if you wanted. Green because he is a frog. Purple, you're gonna need two shades of purple, a lighter and a darker, because his suit has two different colors of purple. And you're also gonna want red and white for his eyes and lips, but I forgot to include those. For supplies for the actual crafting, you're going to need a pair of good scissors. I suggest sewing scissors or fabric scissors. So a hot glue gun and a few hot glue sticks, thread, and a needle to use that thread with. And you can use any color of thread, I just use white. So the first part that you're going to be working on is going to be cutting the shape of his head out of green felt. So you're going to cut a rectangle and then cut that rectangle into a sort of oval shape, which we'll use for his head. And so you can see in the video that I cut a large rectangle and then I split it in half and then cut one of them into that oval shape and then cut the other to match. And so this kind of, you just want to make sure that they're very, very close to being the same size and shape. They don't have to be exact, because when you sew them together or glue them together, then if they don't match up or line up perfectly, that's kind of okay and it won't affect it too much, but you want to get as close as possible. Once you have the two headpieces done, you're going to set those aside for now, and you're going to cut apart the body for his robe. So I actually made this sort of almost ovular on the top half, and then I cut his legs out at this point. So it makes kind of a weird body shape, but it'll make it easier for later if you just make his body one large shape. So then later you can add on the robe or the coat and the boots separately. So I started by cutting the legs first, and then I started cutting kind of like a rounded pant, and then up and straight through, and then I turned it into that oval shape at the top after. And then I left it a little bit flat on the very top of the body, so then his head could kind of, it wouldn't look too awkward. And you can see that I cut the first one, and then I cut the second piece to match out of the felt that I didn't use yet. And that's just, again, same as the head. You want to get it as close as you can. They don't have to be perfectly lined up or proportionate, but as close, or the closer the better for when you sew and put him all together later. And so then you can see that's where the head will go. After finishing cutting out the body, we're actually going to work on the boots. We're just cutting a lot of the pieces out in advance so that then we can start sewing it all together in a quick succession and stuffing, because the details are going to be a little bit harder to do, so we want to get that really solid base done. And so for the boots, if you looked at Halston on the game, or in the game, he has boots which actually leave his toes exposed. So when you're cutting the boots, you want to keep in mind that though you are going for a boot shape, you want to kind of cut off the toes, and we're going to add in some green later to make it so his toes pop out. And you're just going to want to cut 4 of these boot shapes out. We're going to be sewing these together along with the toes, and then we're going to sew them into the pant legs of his torso or his body. So yeah, you're just, again, they don't have to be perfectly even, lined up, proportionate. You just want to get them as close as you can to make it easier on yourself later. Okay, and so here we're getting the green out, and the toes are going to be very small. They're very hard to work with, if we're being honest. I'm not sure, I couldn't really think of a different way to do it. I was coming up with this project as I was recording, so it was a figure it out as I go project, though I had a general idea when I started. But so I cut out 4 small rectangles, and then you just kind of line up those with where the end of the toe of the boot is, and then you're gonna cut a almost like a partial ovular shape, like it's a very rounded part, but then it's flat on the bottom, because that's kind of how people's feet are if you look in most drawings. Sorry, I just dropped some stuff. When you look at drawings of feet, the foot is usually flat on the bottom or flat-ish, and then there's kind of a curve from the toe to leading into the foot and ankle. So you kind of want to mimic that by making the toes kind of rounded on top. And you're gonna want to make these toe pieces a little bit longer than you'd think, because you're actually going to need to sew them into the boots. So having that little bit of extra flex room to sew into the boot will make it easier on yourself, because then you won't be trying to connect it and then having a gap that then you're... Okay, so now we're gonna move the boots aside, and now that we have all of our pieces put together, we're actually gonna start sewing the head first, and leaving a gap to put stuffing into. So you're just gonna, you can start basically wherever you want on the head. It's not going to be sewn to anything else, so you can kind of just go to whatever point as long as you end up closing it after you stuff it. But we're not going to stuff it quite yet. We're going to leave a gap to put the stuffing in later. We're going to stuff everything together, a lot together. Okay, then you're going to start sewing the body. So what I started with, I started at the bottom left pant leg, not across the bottom, because we still need to put the boots in, but I started at the left hand corner of the left pant leg, and I went up and across the top, because again, we're not going to be sewing the head directly onto the body. We're actually going to glue those together. So you can kind of stop after you get around that part. And then we're going to work on attaching the boots, which are a little bit harder. Yeah, the boots are going to be a little bit difficult. You're going to have to put the 2 green layers between the 2 tan layers that you used to make the boots, and then you're going to have to kind of hold them all together as you sew down and around the boot. So you're going to start like on one end, sew down, sew through the foot pieces and the boot pieces as if they are like only 2 layers instead of 4. And then come around and up and and not quite close the boot, because we are going to put a little bit of stuffing inside of the boots. So you want to leave the top open on those, but you just want to make sure that they're very secure, that the toes are attached pretty well, and that there's not too many gaps inside of them. And then you're going to stuff them. And you actually could, you can see that I actually left the heel open on that boot to stuff it. Which is a little bit easier, because then you have better access to the toes and the top of the boot, but you can do it either which way. You can leave the top open, you can leave the ankle open. You just want to make sure that you've gotten the toes fully attached. You don't want to leave the toes as where you're going to stuff from. And then I also forgot my dowel, which if you have a dowel, it'll be really helpful with stuffing, but otherwise you can use just about any object, including just your finger, if your finger fits in. I ended up using a paper clip, and it actually worked pretty well. And so once you finish stuffing, you can sew the boots closed, and they're fine being closed. They're going to get sewn into the body, but you don't actually have to leave them open for that. So this is me. Unfortunately, it looks like I went a little bit farther out of the camera range than I meant to, but you can see that I'm just closing the boot, making sure that the stuffing stays inside as I do so. And you're just going to want to do this with both of the boots. Oh, I forgot to mention that you need stuffing in the supply list. I will add that in somehow later. This is just a sped up way of me finishing these boots off. I think that this is the most difficult part, if I'm being honest, is working on these boots. They definitely gave me the most trouble. Yeah, they were a pain to figure out how to get them to look right. Okay, and then you can see that I just slotted them into the pant legs, and then I'm just sewing the kind of like the sewing line on the boots into the pants, and then I started not from where I stopped sewing on the body, but from where I started before, and then I went the other way to close up the pants and attach the boots, and then went up, stuffed inside the body, and then closed it at that other point where I stopped sewing before. And then you can see that I'm just tucking the extra bit of thread in, and then you can finish. You can tie close the head officially. And then now that you have that, you have all your main parts completed. And so then for the details, you're going to be doing a lot of guesstimating, I'm going to be honest. For the pants, you're going to want to decide where the belt is going to be placed, and then you're going to kind of measure how long the stripes will be at that point. You're going to want the stripes to be able to fit under the belt when you glue it on, and you can make as many stripes as you'd like. You can do stripes all around. I did stripes on both sides, but you don't have to. You could just do the front side if you wanted, and have about the same effect. And you're just going to glue these on, and then you're going to take the belt and you're going to wrap it around and glue it together, and then glue it to Halston's body, over where the stripes meet, or where the stripes end. And then for the face, you're going to be cutting out 2 yellow circles. You're going to cut 2 green eyelids, which are going to be rounded, but then flat on the very bottom. You're going to glue these yellow circles to the eyelids. You're going to cut out 2 small black circles for the pupils, and then glue these onto the yellow to form the eyes for him. And then you can just glue those on at some point. But then for the mouth, you're going to be cutting kind of like just a half or crescent almost, but very stretched out, or just a line, whichever works for you. And then the nose or the nostrils are going to be made with just 2 very small black dots that you're going to want to paste on the face, and you can just make them as so. And then he has sort of a puffy collar under his coat, so you're going to be cutting this from yellow, and then also doing a sort of end piece on that with a white strand as well. And so to cut these from the felt, you kind of want to make the edges a little bit wavy, and these can be whatever size you'd like. They just need to be able to reach around him to secure the head and body together and to secure in place. So once you've secured that to the top of the body and the head, then he should be a little bit more together at this point. And then we get to start on what I consider the most fun part of his outfit, the hat. And so for the hat, you're just going to cut a strip of the darker purple and glue it together in a circle, and then cut out some strands of the lighter purple and glue them as stripes, and then a belt sort of thing for the buckle of the hat, and then cut a small yellow lightning piece and stick it to the buckle, and then cut ovals to attach the hat to and to close the top of the hat, and then you just glue the hat onto Halston's head. For the coat, you're going to be cutting a large rectangular shape and then making it angular on the top, and then cutting strands of yellow to line this coat piece. And I'll try to make this part of the template if I can, but it'll depend on what size you make Halston in general, and like how much you stuff him, whether this will fit, so you may have to adjust. And then for the collar of the coat, you're going to need to get a piece of yellow, that you're able to then fold over and glue on both sides of the coat to give it kind of that collared look when it's actually on Halston. And you want to make sure that the outside is where the yellow will show. And so then you're going to glue it to Halston, and then the last piece is going to be his arms, which I just cut a rectangle or a square of dark purple, and I just rolled it, glued it together, and put little hands in there that are just green strips with an ovular end that I glued inside of those arms and then glued to him. And then that will be the finished project, Halston Balestrom plushie project. And he is the second in the series, along after Merle Ambrose. And the next project will be Moolinda Wu, the life professor at Ravenwood in Wizard101. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. There will be a written version in the description as well as a template if you want to check those out and use them to make the project easier. And Moolinda should be up in about 2 weeks. Thank you.